other places. Okay.
Hi.
Hey, hey, everybody. It's Linda Lippin here from Linda Lippin Pilates, the Pilates Teacher Mastermind, and Strong Women Over 50. I am here with my friend Susanne Mariga. She is a CPA based in Houston, Texas. And Susanne has written a new book that is actually coming out next Tuesday, but is already right in pre-order. Do I understand the #1 bestseller on Amazon?
It is. It is.
Yes.
It's been there
And
since
it's Profit
January.
First. Wow. Profit First for minority business enterprises. So as you guys know, in addition to teaching Pilates clients, I do also mentor Pilates teachers and work with business professionals. And I think that this profit first method of cash management is really crucially important for all of us. It's important for all Pilates teachers, all fitness professionals, anyone basically who's running a business. Susanne started using it on her business, which is an accounting business, right? So any service business, any brick and mortar business can benefit by using Profit First, which is not an accounting system, by the way. It is simply a cash management system that allows us as business owners who are doing all the work to literally profit first from our businesses. And you may be hearing this and not even understanding how that could be possible. And that is where I'm going to have Susanne explain to us how that works. But first, Susanne, tell us just a little bit about yourself and your background and what brought you to writing this awesome book.
Yeah, definitely. And I apologize, Linda. It looks like my volume is showing on both Instagram as well as on the regular stream. But I am a CPA. I have been a CPA for over 20 years. And it's interesting because, I started out my career in Big Four public accounting. So you're Arthur Andersen, and then later on went to KPMG. And it was interesting because, at some point my life started to change. And about 13 years ago, I was having literally my daughter. And I realized that I wasn't going to be able to travel for work the way that I used to be able to travel. And I love traveling, but being a new mom, that was not going to be possible to live that lifestyle that I had been used to. And so I decided that I was going to venture into the world of entrepreneurship. And it's interesting because, I think like a lot of entrepreneurs that start businesses, like we love what we do. Linda, I have never met anyone that loved Pilates as much as you do, right? We love literally what we do.
Yes, that's why we do it.
Exactly. And we would do it absolutely for free because literally it's our zone of genius. It's where we feel that we've been called to do the work that only we can do, right? And just like any entrepreneur, where you're, Pilates teacher or, I'm going to Zumba instructor, or even I'm going to say even a plumber, right? That's just your zone of genius. And what I found of, being an entrepreneur 3 years into my business, that literally I love what I was doing so much that I would have gave it away for free. And that's exactly what I did. I gave away it for free. Like if you wanted to talk tax strategy, even if you weren't paying, I was like, yes, let's go meet at like a coffee shop and talk tax strategy. I just love it so much. And it was literally, 3 years later that I had started my business, and my husband literally sat me down at the dinner table. And, for you guys that have significant others or spouses that, when they say it's time to talk, you got some bad things going, right? It's some bad things happening.
Not that talk.
That talk, something bad is about to happen, something's about to happen. And literally, he sat me down on a Sunday night, and he had our daughter in his lap. And he said, you know what, Susanne, I think you'll be better off for all of us if you just get a job. And it absolutely broke my heart, because, first of all, I felt like I had a job. I just wasn't getting paid for the work that I was doing. Right.
Right.
And, and then, but he was absolutely right because, at my last job, I was a manager. So I had a 401k, right? So they were putting matching in for my retirement. I also had, I had help, right? So I didn't have to work like 80-hour weeks, right? I had manager, I had staff that I could literally delegate work to. And I had a paycheck, right? That's the one. And it was consistent, and it was the same amount every single week. And so he was absolutely right. And it was interesting because, it wasn't until I really started to align my intentions with what I wanted in the long term that my company really started to give me the results that I wanted, right? And that's really when I found Profit First. Profit First is an amazing system. It literally, how it works is with our natural biological and psychological makeup. As human beings, we are efficient. We use everything that we're given, everything, right? That's just how we're designed. And, I always like to give that example of dieting, right? When you go on a diet, one of the first things they tell you, and you guys are obviously fitness instructors, but people like me, we struggle with that. That's why we need you guys, right? That's why we need you guys. And one of the first things they tell you when you go on a diet is use smaller plates, right? Use smaller plates because you're going to eat less if you use a smaller plate.
Right.
And so naturally, what was happening was, they were like, why don't we just do this kind of like with our finances, right? Why don't we do this with our finances? Why don't we create what we call the illusion of scarcity? So like a magic trick, illusion of scarcity. And how that works in Profit First literally is we literally start bank accounts, and those bank accounts, each bank account has a designated purpose for it. So you have a bank account for revenue, where all your revenue is going to come into. You have a bank account for profit because you are going to pay your profit first. Yes, pay your profit first. You're going to have a
What?
yeah, exactly. It's going to be intentional, like Dave Ramsey's envelope system. You're going to pay your profit first.
Right.
You're going to have an owner's pay account too, right? Because as an owner of the business, you need to give yourself a consistent paycheck. And so many people that I meet, so many business owners are like, I just pay myself whatever's left over after I pay all my employees and all my bills. And I'm like, no, you need to pay yourself first because, my personal experience was when I was working for free, right? And I was working these 80-hour weeks, during that time, my back actually went out, like literally snap on a Saturday afternoon, right before April 15th. And literally I was in bed and my doctor had put me on like muscle relaxer subscriptions. And I was like, man, I wish I could hire somebody to do this work, but I couldn't because I wasn't even paying myself. So how could I hire somebody else to do the work, right? And so we need to pay ourselves first because if we don't, even if we're not going to end up staying in this position long term, eventually we're going to be able to hire someone that is going to do that work. And so they are going to want a salary. And so this money is set aside for them when we step out of our business. The other account that we want to set up is a tax account, right?
Mhm.
Because, frankly, you're in business. You're going to now have profits because you're being intentional. You're going to have owner's pay. And the last thing you want to deal with is a tax man and like having surprises at the end of the year. And so what we're going to do is we're going to reserve for this tax account too, so that, at the end of the year, when it comes time for taxes, we can pay the taxes too. And then finally, whatever is left over, that's for operating expenses. So, it's a smaller pie and you're going to have to make some hard decisions. Do I want to be in this downtown studio or this really nice studio in this really artsy area? Or do I want to save money on maybe a less expensive place, but then really be able to hire the best and brightest in order to support my business? And that's exactly what that operating expense account is for.
That makes sense. So that way, instead of just saying, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And, most of us it's so interesting, especially as Pilates teachers, because we're so intentional about what we do with our clients, right? I mean, the whole system is set up to be intentional, right? To work on specific client outcomes in specific ways, in specific, order, actually. But when then it comes to kind of taxes and finances and all of that, we're very unintentional. I've heard it said by many Pilates teachers that they were actually taught, even by their mentors, that they're probably not ever going to make a lot of money.
Oh, wow.
So just be prepared for that, if you're opening a Pilates studio. And that just always seemed wrong to me, why I should be putting all this work in and not making money. But then again, no one ever talked to me about, well, if you set aside money for taxes and money for profit and money for yourself, then what you have left is what you have to pay people with, or have coaches, or, whatever other things that you're going to need in your business. And so I think a lot of folks either go over or under in terms of how much they're paying out in payroll and paying other people, or just not getting the help, and then still not being intentional about where the money is, what's coming in, and where it's going. I know I never was, as much. And then suddenly I would be like, how did all that money come in? And this is what's left.
Exactly. And that's, that's the American business, right? That's American business, right? The SBA tells us that, when a business starts, there's that first year, about 20% of them are going to go out of business, right? And they're going to go out of business specifically just for the reason that you said, Linda. They did not have intentional profitability. And when you don't have intentional profitability, what happens is eventually you run out of cash, right? You just run
Right.
out of cash.
You
And then
do.
even and then after 5 years, right, half of them will be left standing because at some point, you're not going to be able to get a bank loan if you don't have any profit, right? And so if you don't, and you have accumulated losses, you can't keep funding your activities. So you're exactly right. If you're not intentional about profit, you will end up being a statistic.
Yeah. Yes. And um, even pre-COVID, Pilates studios would open and close kind of all the time. And it's, I think it's especially important to, though, that you are, writing this book for minority owned business enterprises, especially at this particular moment in time, and in politics and in history, because I think there's, entire groups, way more than half of the United States, that really needs, an elevation, and that isn't always convinced that they're going to be able to work in their own businesses to enjoy that American dream and really have it, work for them. And ultimately, we want to leave that legacy, right? You can now sit with your kids and tell a completely different story, right? About what they can look forward to moving forward, and what life can look like running your own business, no matter what color your skin is, no matter where you're from or what you look like.
Exactly. You are so correct about it. We are in a very unique time in history. And, every generation before us has taken us a little bit farther along our trail, right? I always tell my story, I'm half Chinese, half African American, and I'm 3 generations removed from slavery. So my grandfather was a sharecropper in North Carolina, and they literally worked on plantations that enslaved people at one point in time. And to be in a position now where we can create our own legacies, right? That really, it's interesting because I was writing this book, Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises. you know I was very tempted to fill it initially with statistics, statistics of, how Black businesses do versus white businesses. It was based upon school districts and different stats. But I stopped myself. I said, you know what? That's not the right approach, right? Because really the statistics are not encouraging. But what we need to do is we need to look at the bell-shaped curve, right? In statistics, there's a bell-shaped curve. There's the median where everybody kind of falls in, and then you have these outliers. And so I interviewed purposely in the book the 7-figure minority business enterprise. So minority owned business, ethnic minority business enterprises. And what I was looking for is tell me the things that you did right. Tell me the things that you did, and let's study the things that you did so that we can analyze those and really create a different path of how to
Mhm.
attain that success, is what we did in this book. And it was interesting because when I first wrote the book, I had this hypothesis, right? I think part of me is like this nerdy, like scientist, and you guys have to be too, being in Pilates. There's a science component to it, right? That physiology. And I had this hypothesis that at least one or two of the people that I interviewed, and these are like big entrepreneurs, these are Gen 1 millionaires, okay? And I was like, what was your biggest hindrance, in your business? And I expected one or two to say, the color of my skin, like I was constantly going for contracts. People were turning me down. I expected at least one or two to tell me that, right?
Mhm.
And it was interesting because as I asked each entrepreneur, nobody said that. Everybody talked about, it was learning to manage people, learning to manage finances, learning how to manage a team and motivate people to move in the same direction, right? Or even learning to trust your own instinct. But no one said it was the color of their skin. I said, you know what? I think we're on to something now. I think we're on to something. And I think we're on to something that we now hold ourselves back, right? We hold ourselves
Right.
back. It's no longer, racism happens. There are things that are happening, but we can have success in spite of that. And it was interesting because, it really just forced me just to kind of look at things a different way. And I really think that this 2021 is a completely different moment in history where we literally can rewrite our family legacies.
I agree. You know, I was raised by basically Jews that had survived the Holocaust, right? So my grandfather had come, both of my grandparents on both sides had come over on the boat. We can like trace them back from where they were from. And again, I grew up with that whole, like, you know, it was just intrinsic. I just remember, you know, if there was a Holocaust documentary on PBS, it was on all the time from the time I was a little kid. And I think, you know, a lot of stuff gets like internalized. It really does. And it takes a lot to kind of rewrite that script. And I think, you know, a script that a lot of us know from just business, or what we thought was business and accounting 101, is that you take your income, you subtract your expenses, and what's left is your profit. And from what I understand now, you take your income, you subtract your profit, and then what you have left is what you budget for expenses.
Exactly. So literally in Profit First, we invert that accounting equation. And I'll tell you, I love that accounting equation like nobody else, because I'm certified in that equation, right? As certified public accountant, like I can algebraically solve for like components. Like you tell me how much you want for profit, I'll tell you how much revenue you need to make in order to achieve that profit. But Profit First is different, right? Because what's wrong with the traditional accounting equation, just like you said, Linda, when we focus on revenue, right? We focus on selling, discounting our prices to get people through the door, make everybody our customer, right? What happens at the end of the day, and when we focus on being responsible and paying our expenses and not accumulating debt, you know, what happens at the end of the day, that profit is literally just a random byproduct, right? It's random because we weren't intentional about designing how we were going to create that path to get there. And so in Profit First, what happens is literally we say, like you said, Linda, we take our profit first, right? So it's revenue minus profit, meaning after you pay Linda, after you pay yourself, you know, whatever's left over, that's what's left over for expenses.
Yeah. And that's such a mind-blowing whole thing, to think about, that we can actually make money from our businesses, that we can personally profit from the work that we do in, you know, our own businesses. I think, you know, so many Pilates teachers have been struggling, and not just in Pilates, but everywhere. I mean, all entrepreneurs, you know, we're all told that it could be 3 to 5 years before we break even, let alone reach profitability, right?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
that's like a thing. Yeah, we're all told the statistics that most businesses close, that, you know, or your Pilates teacher, you shouldn't plan on making money, you know, whatever that looks like. And, you know, and then first of all, we go into it anyway, which is kind of an interest that could be a whole interesting psychological discussion on its own.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's
But
damaging, right? I mean, you can
right,
go 5 years without having a paycheck, you know? I mean, imagine not
exactly.
only that, but the opportunity cost too, right? Because if you don't have a paycheck, that's less that you can reinvest, right? Because wealth compounds, right? There's an interest rate that happens, and plus, you know, or there's a growth in investments, right? And if you're delaying that wealth building, you're going to lose opportunities to be able to reinvest in your future.
And again, it's that thing of being intentional, right? So it's like, if you're intentional about where you're getting your Pilates certification, if you're intentional about what brands of apparatus you're buying, if you're intentional about what kind of clothing you're wearing in the studio, you need to be intentional about how you're dealing with your business and your money. I know. I remember the first time I listened to Dave Ramsey, actually, and he, you know, started talking about the envelopes and the illusion of scarcity, and, you know, starting to just pay down your cards from like the smallest one first, and it all made so much sense. And I was like, why doesn't anyone ever talk about this or teach everybody else this? And so I'm, you know, of course, we're all thrilled that Mike did it. in his Profit First book, but we also know that this needs to be, spread and kind of brought, to other audiences and to other people so that we can all kind of, benefit from this kind of knowledge. I really recommend that folks actually join your free Facebook group.
Well, thank
Profit
you.
First. No, seriously, because you give great information in there. There's also, you get a tiny bit more, right, than the book, or a teeny bit more than you do in this, but it's like enough to kind of, whet one's appetite to not only want to look more at Profit First, but also look more at working with you, right? Because you also offer a Profit First service, do you not?
Yeah, definitely. We help businesses implement Profit First in their businesses, as well as do their accounting, and we specialize in high net worth taxation. And, even with the book, I mean, Profit First to Minority Business Enterprises, even though it's geared more towards a minority audience, there are nuggets in there. And Linda, you got a special copy coming to you in the gold box. I'm so excited. Amy told me that it's on its way for you. But, one, it talks about some of my favorite strategies, right? It really is for that Gen 1 entrepreneur, that Gen 1 wealth builder is what I like to call it. One of the things that we talk about is high net worth tax strategies. This is like one of my favorite things. And one of the things that I like to do with my clients is, most accountants will tell you, hey, go out and buy that SUV, that truck. And you're like, okay, I have a Pilates studio. Why do I need an SUV or truck? I'm never going to have my students piled up in my car. Never. And the mats stay at the studio, right? And if I do need to get equipment, I'm just going to rent a U-Haul, right? Or they'll tell you, hey, go out and buy that filing cabinet at the end of the year to get taxes down. And we will never tell you that as a high net worth Profit First accountant, never. Instead, what I'm going to do is, how do we build your wealth long term? And what are your ultimate goals? For example, if your goal is to increase your profits, right? At the end of the day, one of the ways that you're going to do that is by decreasing your turnover, right? So increasing longevity. The more your employees are with you, the longer your employees are with you, the more profits you're going to make, because over time, our employees get better at doing their jobs, right? And the more they get better, eventually you can start to scale and let them run your business without you, right? But you need to have longevity for that to happen. And so what happens is, what we'll recommend is, maybe we need to do a retirement account, right? That is not a safe harbor account, that is a little bit more sophisticated. Maybe we need to have a 6-year vesting period in there. And what that means is that if you stay with me for 6 years and you're that loyal sidekick that I've always dreamed of, right? Then you're going to get this employer share, this profit share, as a reward. Now, if you decide to leave me and go down to the studio down the street, you're going to forfeit that retirement account. And what happens when you forfeit that retirement account? The money goes back into the trust, right? And then when you retire as a business owner, it belongs to you, right? Because nobody else is there. And so you built your wealth along the way while getting a tax deduction. We'll also talk about wealth shifting from high brackets to low brackets. How does Warren Buffett make all his money but pay less taxes than a secretary? We're going to talk about things like that too in the book. We also talk about government contracting. I know if for anybody that has a studio that does business with like the fire department or school district or anything like that, when is a government contract a good contract, right? So we'll be looking at those type of things and how to price those, and even when to walk away from them, right? Because they're not always great contracts. So definitely, even though it's written for minority spend, it is a book that really, I would say, anybody that is the Gen 1 in their family that's really ready to pivot their legacy, it's an excellent book for them.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think so many of us, especially in the Pilates world, are first generation business owners and entrepreneurs, and it's, we're in uncharted waters is what it comes down to. And we hear high net worth tax strategy and we're like, I'm scared by all of those words.
But it'll allow you to do more, and it'll allow you to give more, and it'll allow you to reach your goals and be able to retire one day, which is great. Even though I can see the benefit of being able to do Pilates at 80, right? Because you need to be able to be flexible. If you lose it, don't use it, you lose it. But
I do feel like that, the mindset shift that has to happen for so many of us is that this really can happen. And it's about basically getting trained and being intentional. As I say to people, it's like none of us knew Pilates before we went into a Pilates certification program. How many times did we have to stand there and practice changing springs on the equipment, adding the long spine straps to the leather straps in the appropriate way so it didn't take 5 minutes out of our client sessions. All kinds of stuff that we just drilled and did and went through and practiced and did whatever. And it actually turns out, I've learned, 30 years later, that in my 50s, that actually finances are kind of the same. And running the business is kind of the same. And if you find those coaches, those methods that actually work and that work, you tell tons of stories in the book about clients who didn't think this was going to work, and it worked.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. Profit First, I always say, people always ask me, what's the hardest part about Profit First? And, I'm like, first of all, Profit First, it's a cash management system, just like Linda said. It's not an accounting system, it's a cash management system that's literally designed to allow you to reach your goals. It's physics, right? You move money and you don't touch it, you're going to be successful. The hardest part about Profit First is really just getting started. People are literally thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to do this. I don't want to start these bank accounts. I don't want my banker to look at me like I'm weird. I'm like, who cares? When you're a millionaire, your banker will be smiling at you and go, hey, can I get you into private banking? You know what I mean? This is where it starts. And I would say, if you're starting out on your Profit First journey, start with 1%. Start with 1% going to profit, And if you're already at 1%, just bump it up to 2 and just gradually increase it over time, in order to get to your goals.
Yeah. And have goals.
Exactly. Exactly.
Have income goals, have intentional business growing and business scaling and other goals. Because if you don't, once again, it's just the whole thing. If we're not intentional about how we're doing it, it's not going to work. It just doesn't work. And some of us are, like I always say, that I was very lucky. I was just lucky that, my businesses did well and I did well, but I went through a personal bankruptcy. And what how I ended up recouping. You'll love this one,
share.
I sold everything.
Oh wow!
And we took jobs in the Turks and Caicos.
Wow!
And while we were over there, where it's a foreign earned income exemption, Turks and Caicos doesn't have taxes. I mean, they do have. We paid into national health and national insurance, and the common things that we used. And we, worked at Parrot Key, so I had staff housing. So that combination of no rent, money coming in, no tax. I mean, I filed tax returns with negative income, which was kind of fun for a few years, but that allowed us to kind of recoup everything and kind of come back and start over. So I'm glad, like, yay, that I had that option, right? Because many people don't. But, now that I'm back and I'm in my 50s, I'm like, that's when I realized it was really time to like get it together. And I think the COVID year really did that for a lot of us. So many people started online businesses, and we need to learn how to keep the money from these things.
Oh yeah. And that's an inspirational story too, because a lot of people, they get caught up in, am I too late in this game? Is it too late to start building savings and retirement? And Linda, you have a great story there, because, there are different ways to get to that point, right? But no matter where you're starting from, you're starting from a loss, you're starting from negative income, you're starting from a bankruptcy, it's never too late, right? It's never too late to start putting away, that intentional profit, even if it's just 1%. It's never too late.
I mean, I first had to work through, all my anger at all the years that I just didn't put anything away because I was scared to, or didn't think it was worth it, or was once again told that, only rich people did that. So I didn't have to deal with that. But, then I'm sitting here like, I just figure I have a solid 15 to 20 years of income producing time before I want to stop. And I now know that in that 15 to 20 years, I can sock away some money. And that, that is really, that's a lifeline that lets me breathe. Right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So where should people go to get your book? Of course, I'm going to put links and everything in the comments, but do tell.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You can actually, it's available on Amazon. You can pre-order the book. We definitely want pre-orders to happen. So if you go to Amazon.com and type in Profit First for minority business enterprises, it's also available at Barnes and Nobles. We do have some additional bonuses. If you buy 3 books and you submit your receipt, you'll go to Profit First for minority business.com and enroll there because we have some special bonuses, including getting your profit map. If you buy 3 books, we're having a special of, just bringing our book out in the world. Well, actually, you'll get invited into a private Zoom room with Mike Michalowicz and I, where we will literally talk about the
Oh,
making of the book and how we did it. So if anybody's interested in writing a book, this is insider information. It's very hard to get. And I'll tell you this, I may never write another book again, so there will not be this opportunity. So definitely, if you are interested in writing a book, definitely check out the bonuses because I know that, to get that kind of information, you have to purchase or hire a publicist, which is probably about $20,000 in range. So definitely
right.
check
For
this
those
out.
of you who know that this book is going to be awesome and you have staff or you have friends or you have people in your group that you think could use this, it could be really useful for you right now to order a few, send them out to your friends and be able to join that because I think I'm going to do that actually,
Yeah.
just to join that.
Each one teach one, right? So, I mean,
Yeah,
everybody has a neighbor that needs one. Everyone has a coworker that has a side hustle. Definitely check out those bonuses because, I mean, to get in the room with Mike Michalowicz, can't tell you when that's ever going to happen for under a few $1,000s.
right. And I also understand that you are doing some giving along with the sales of this book. Tell us a little more.
It's interesting, Linda. My big, hairy, audacious goal 4 years ago, somebody said, if you had to create a big, hairy, audacious goal, what would it be? And at the time, it was something I wanted to do, but I had no idea how it was going to happen, no idea at all. And I said, you know what? I want to be like Oprah. I want to send girls to Africa to school. And I particularly picked Zimbabwe because my husband is from there and I know a little bit about the culture. And in Zimbabwe, the government pays for your college education. But the problem is most people don't get to go to college because their parents can't afford the primary and secondary education fees.
Right.
So they have to pay for just to go for their primary school. And so one of my big, hairy, audacious goals was, let's start a scholarship fund to send girls to school because when we send more girls to school, they have more choices in life. Maybe they don't have to get married, right? Maybe they don't have to be a second or third wife. And
Mm.
let's send these girls to school so that we give them more options and we pivot their legacy. So for every book that's sold, we partner with a nonprofit organization called Hope Worldwide. And literally $1 for every book is being sent to Hope Worldwide for the scholarship fund to send girls to school. So, I had no idea 4 years ago that this big, hairy, audacious goal was going to actually come true. But now we've got a permanent endowment through this book where literally we're not just changing your legacy, right? We're changing legacies around the world.
That I've got chills. Seriously, that is
Mm-hmm.
so wonderful. And that it was such a goal of yours, right? And now here we are, 4 years later and you've done it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it goes back what you said, Linda, about being intentional, right? We'll always underestimate what we're going to accomplish in 2 years or a year, but what you do in 5, you just never know what the universe is going to open up for you if you really just set your intentions and set your, it's like almost like your subconscious just starts to see different, I want to do this. I can link this with this and things just happen on just a magical level.
Yes. I realized it's kind of like when COVID hit and all of a sudden it was like, okay, we're not going back. And I kind of knew that it was going to be a good 6 months to a year. I felt it. I knew it. And, I looked at my husband and I said, all right, we've been playing around with this online business thing for, my part-time kind of side thing for like a number of years. This is the time, as my mother said, excuse my language, shit or get off the pot. And,
I love your mother.
right. And so I just decided to go for it. Joined Unstoppable Entrepreneur, like just went all in. And it's been a great year. And the advance. And it's literally been, I think, the best year ever, but partly because of just such a great community of people who are giving and sharing and serving on these really huge levels, and I think the Pilates teachers and other folks who are watching this, if you're sitting there thinking, well, I'll never be working with Susanne because I'm never going to need a high net worth taxation specialist, you don't know that actually. And if you get the book, and again, Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises, it is on Amazon for pre-order now. It comes out next Tuesday. But you get the book, you read the book, you learn from that, you open up your bank accounts. I mean, the folks at TD know all about it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, you walk into most of the major banks and you're like, all right, I'm doing this Profit First thing. And they're like, okay, so how many accounts do you need and what do you need them for? And they figure that out.
TD knows about that. That is pretty cool.
Kind of great. Or it might just be our specific kind of branches, but it looks like there's been some corporate training on that side of it.
That's awesome.
Is, start doing it. Just start doing it. It's just like, when I listened to the Ramsey stuff and was like, I'm in all this credit card debt. And I just started doing that. Like, pay the minimum to everything else, focus on one thing and send all the extra there. And you want to know something, suddenly 10 months later, 6 months later, that card's paid off.
Oh yeah.
And you're not paying 20-something% interest anymore to that bank.
It's the little decisions that pivot exactly
right.
where you're going to go. It's
and
again,
a
little every day.
Yeah. And it's that same intention. So for the Pilates and fitness folks out there, the yoga folks out there, it is the same intention that we put into what we do every day with our clients, with ourselves, in the studio, in our businesses. We now need to start putting that same attention into our finances and into how we run our businesses and deal with our money so that we can leave a legacy. Wouldn't it be great if all of our businesses could be here after we're gone? Wouldn't it be great if we had an actual legacy plan of selling our businesses, having someone take over our businesses, continue our service in this way, and be able to profit from that at the same time? And as I always remind people, you can't give money to other people, to other charities, to other causes if you don't have enough to pay your own bills.
Oh yeah. And that's a great key too, Linda, that you said. A lot of people don't think about that, but your business is actually an asset. It is actually an asset. When I see businesses that sell, they go for either a percentage of total revenue or they go for a multiple profit. So in between that multiple profit and that percentage of revenue is really that negotiation space for the selling price of the business. So, as a business owner, what you want to do is you don't just want to have high sales, you want to also have profitability that supports that sales too. So it's really important to really have intentional profit in your business, especially when you start to think about your exit strategy. And as a Pilates studio, your assets is your recurring revenue, which is your memberships, right? It's your memberships there. So definitely important to balance that profitability goal with that revenue goal.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And, and making sure to keep up the level of service so those clients stay so that the revenue continues. So that all keeps working. Well, Susanne, I have so enjoyed this discussion. And thank you so much for actually being my first LinkedIn Live.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure.
This is my inaugural LinkedIn Live. Here we are.
Yay.
I did it. And I will continue doing it. But everybody, I hope that you really enjoyed it. I hope you learned something about Profit First, about how to move forward in your own business. I really, really, really do recommend Susanne's book. I've known Susanne for about a year now. And she comes so highly recommended by such a large number of people. And all of my personal interactions with you have just been wonderful, including the free discussion that we had about my audit. So, stuff happens.
It was a pleasure.
Yes. And I will see all of you guys soon. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you have any follow-up questions for Susanne, just leave them in the comments or DM me wherever you are, and I will reach out to her and we'll get some answers.
Thank you, Linda.
So thank you, everybody, and I will see you guys soon.
Thank you.